Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. The approval of the agenda and order of business. There's a lot on there, so whatever.
I'll move we approve the agenda.
Second it, but I was gonna remove, we hadn't met in a long time, I was just gonna give a quick update.
Well, you can
Okay.
with that. And then,
Yeah,
I have a district council grant, but I have to photocopy it. I just have it in my email, so I forgot to do that this morning. So I'm gonna add it, but I'll get it to you on the first break. Because we'll be a while before we get to all new business. So district council grant, thank you.
Okay, so that's the motion. Do we have a seconder for the?
Okay.
Oh, you did, okay. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Public input, I believe you wish to address council?
Yeah. Talk now?
Yeah,
Usually you just state your name and where your address is.
My name's Glenn Vino, live at Chester Downs Road. And we supposed to have that road paved years ago. We want the same deal as what Islandville got done. They got done before we did, which we were supposed to be done. They said we'd be done the very next year. That's a long, well, 3-4 years ago now. All of a sudden we did before that road ever gets done. Now, I'm telling you, and everybody out there wants it. Everybody are fighting for it. There ain't one person what don't want it. So I said, I'll come up, and I did. Because I'll get tired of it, myself and everybody out there. Now, when you drive in there, you think there's a kid, got one of those stampers when you play bingo cards with, and all they're off the road. That's what it's like. One on top of another. And on sideways, David, I got a little car. It bangs, smash and bangs, but I gotta go through there. Now, I think it's time that gets done. You know, and we all are after it. If we have to, we'll bring everybody to Chester Downs.
And I can say, Glenn, that after I talked to you, I spoke to others on the road, and this is a very popular sentiment.
Yeah,
It's not unique to Glenn.
just that, you know, and everybody up there wants
okay.
it.
Anybody else have any questions? Yeah.
Okay,
It's all-
but we want the same deal as Islandville got. Okay, that's all. That's the way it's supposed to be. Our taxes don't go up. Okay, and Islandville's taxes didn't go up, and we want that same deal.
Can I ask a question? Because I wasn't on council. Island View happened. What process by which, how was that selected exactly? It's mysterious to me because I think part of the rage in Chester Downs is that they're very close, the two subdivisions, and Island Views was in much better condition, and it was done in advance.
And it's a lot bigger because you got all the side roads.
I honestly don't remember.
I think it's very confusing to the residents of Chester Downs how that happened.
Anyway, that's what I got to say. And if I gotta come back up, you want know any more, I'll be here.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Question. You said it was promised to you a couple of years ago, you
I
said,
don't know.
tell me more about that.
What's that?
You said that getting your road paved was promised.
Well, it was, Islandville got done, then we were sort of promised next year. Now, my own farm works out the pit, gravel, and that's the word out there where he was working, they got covered with stuff. You know, like council was had that up for the next year. How? I don't know. But it never happened. But they talk about it out there because, no, they do the gravel and the bid and stuff like that, right? So it was supposed to be done the next year, right? We should have been done first, January. And we want the same deal. That's all.
Yeah.
You know, that's all I'm saying. We want the same deal.
Okay.
That good enough?
Yeah.
If not, I'll be back out.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. See you later.
See you later. Okay, minutes of previous meetings, canceled November the 10th. Any errors or omissions there, people?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Public hearing minutes.
It was emailed out in the second.
They were.
It's in the OneDrive in the amended packet.
I didn't, okay, thank you. I didn't download that.
Well, all I know is that
They're
there,
right there now, yeah.
so, I mean, again, it's errors or omissions.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. 5.1, committee of the whole. And there are a variety of motions there that need approval. I don't know if people want anything separated there.
I'll make a motion to approve. The 2022 480 through to 2022 483.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Got 2 pages there. Oh, no, here. Am I missing anything there, Dan?
Nominating committee. Nominating committee.
Yeah.
No, the nominating committee.
Motions.
Yeah, so we need to approve the nominating committee recommendations.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'll move that we approve the appointments. 2022 473 through to 2022 476.
I'll second.
Can you give us the names who you're talking about?
Yeah, we appointed the Municipal Planning Advisory Committee, District 3, U Harbor, District 5, we didn't have any applications, and District 6, Margis and Reeves. And then appointment to the Rec Committee, District 1, we did not receive anyone, District 4, Adam Kaiser, District 7, Kevin Nazar, and Fences and Arbitration
Where's that?
will be staff, the bylaw enforcement officer will be appointed. So I'm assuming that will be Brandon Mosier, and Western Regional Housing will be David Murdoch.
Do you have any other?
No,
No, we didn't have any patients.
So there's no one who wasn't chosen or didn't apply. So in District 3, my district, there was only one application.
that's correct.
Waiting, we have vacancies,
Not that, I mean, Mr. Harper's a good addition, I agree, but I just didn't.
There was
know
no
what
others.
else applied.
no others.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. No public presentations that I'm aware of.
I agree.
Oh, yes, sorry.
I just wanted to give it, excuse me, a quick update. We haven't met in a while. And we appointed a new chair, David Mitchell, and a vice chair, Stolene Thorburn. We made a couple of motions. One was the hazard risk vulnerability assessment is presented. We just categorizing the importance of each one. The emergency mutual aid agreement was Kings County, Queens County, and Annapolis, and I think one is agreed, and they're working with the other two. So we share services and equipment and all that type of thing. And the last one was, it was $3,000 from the contingency fund for emergency preparedness and outreach that they were going to use for basically advertisement and reach out to different communities.
Yeah, to promote the awareness.
So we approved those three motions. That was a vote.
Questions?
I do, I have a question around the counties that have signed on with the mutual aid.
I think Kings has, and the other two, they're still working with Queens.
But they were interested in
They're
doing it.
interested, and one has, and the other two are still working.
Because I know with Kings, Kings County, what's that, Haynes County? In terms of the Playhouse fire and the ladder equipment, the ladder trucks, the equipment and so on.
Yeah, Kings was one that had.
Yeah, okay.
And there's another round of grants coming too. I should mention that maybe for the generators.
Oh, yeah.
The first round was 2 million. I think there's another 2 million for the second round, which will probably next later on this year or early in the new year.
Still for.
Those are for grants for comfort centers and other community organizations.
So, and still pushing the generators?
Generators.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen such a push up in my life.
Well,
It's too bad they
apparently-
couldn't get some volunteers to come with that, right?
Well, apparently the last,
Oh,
the big
seriously?
issue with the last storms and there's a lot of people,
Again.
maybe some did not have them.
Yeah.
And so they decided, I guess, to put a big push on to get them all ready so they could open this thing.
I think in our area, I'm not sure, maybe just Chester Basin and maybe. 'cause
Yeah, and I
like with the-
contacted
the
them and
church
asked them, but that was, the timing wasn't very
Oh, yeah,
good. And they
no,
were just in the process of electing a new executive and all this kind of stuff.
But again, the generators only is one piece of a comfort center.
Oh, yes.
It is, I think there's up to $57 for each grant up to the max
Yeah.
amount. And another issue, there was something with testing of the water was an issue with some of the conference centers. So I
Okay,
think
that's
they
good.
extended that,
That's good.
depend on usage, for a number of years, every year.
Good information.
Because that's the main reason that we don't have a comfort center in my district. It's
Why?
not just having a generator, which they don't, but the step,
It's a volunteers.
volunteers to go
Volunteers.
be there, And when the roads are bad, it's the last place to be plowed. And
So, and again, it's my personal take on it, but that push out of the generators was massive. I got it from like 10 different sources, 10 at least. And again, it's generators are fine, but it's kind of dangling that carrot a little bit. So, thank you, but it's not any good. It's just gonna sit there with no volunteers.
Okay. Okay, flag raising. I guess it's next, isn't it?
I think it's just second and final notice of the flag raising and protocol or policy and protocol. And it's just amendments that will clarifies that if an observance is recurring, then the request,
don't need
it
to
removes
request
that,
it,
yeah. So it puts in annual ones that we will do.
You need a motion for that?
Yes, we do.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion carried. Okay. First notice, terms of reference for registration, fire and emergency service providers.
So this one is just the amendments to P33 that take away, that undo some of the changes I think that we did for COVID related to the online meetings and make it.
You have to have your meetings now and you have to notice it.
It gives the
notify them.
ability to do that in case of an emergency without us having to re-amend the documents again.
That's what.
So somebody want to give first notice? So move.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, motion carried. Okay,
Tim is going to join us virtually.
tax
And
exemption.
this is picking, and he'll walk you through what the issue is and what decisions required by council.
Okay, good morning, council.
Morning.
So this is a follow-up to an item that you have obviously discussed a few times in the past. The last time we spoke about it was in June. Council provided direction to create a new policy to replace the current bylaw 74 for tax exemptions to charitable nonprofit organizations and other organizations, as well as requesting additional information to these exemptions, to provide you with additional information that was requested at that meeting. As we develop the new policy, we require council's input on whether to continue providing exemptions to organizations with restrictive membership covenants to ensure that the new policy aligns with council's goals and priorities. The recommendation for you today is to direct administration to do one of the following things. The first would be to include wording in the new tax exemption policy that would exclude organizations with restrictive membership covenants from being eligible for these exemptions, or to direct administration to not include such wording and continue to provide the option for exemptions to be provided to such organizations. Note, for the purposes of this policy, restrictive membership covenants does not include payment of a membership fee. That's not something we're considering as a restrictive covenant in this case. Under the current bylaw, there are some exemptions being provided to membership-based organizations with restrictive membership covenants that prevent many residents of the municipality from becoming members. In recent years, council and administration have heard arguments both in favor of and in opposition to providing such exemptions. However, no decision has been made as to whether council would like us to continue to provide these or to exclude them. Additionally, there was a bit of follow-up from that last discussion. There was a question about the District 1 Fire Commission. We've reviewed that, and that property is assessed as commercial exempt, so we don't actually send a tax bill to those for that property. So kind of a moot point, but just wanted to follow up on that. A bit more context, the total of all exemptions provided through the current bylaw in the current taxation year is $224,273.06. A detailed list of those organizations has been provided in attachment number 1. Additionally, in addition to the exemptions provided under bylaw 74, which is to be replaced by the new policy, there are 309 residential, commercial, and resource properties within the municipality that are assessed as an exempt category by PVSC and therefore do not receive property bills. I've also included a summary of those properties, although not a detailed list, in attachment 2. The implications of the decision before you today obviously will have a policy impact because this is to feed into the development of the new policy. The financial or budgetary impact, the current exemptions being provided to organizations that have been identified as having restrictive membership covenants is $9,684.68. So the impact of excluding those would be to reduce that exemption by that amount and therefore increase tax revenue by that amount. And then in further years, it would obviously be a similar amount adjusted for any changes in tax rates or assessment values. So unless there are any questions, that's what I'm bringing in front of you today is a request to make a decision as to whether to include or exclude this type of organization from exemptions.
Have you identified the organizations that currently get it that would not get it if we change the policy?
Yes, it is the three. There are 3 organizations. They've all been discussed specifically here in the past. Those are the 3 that specifically are included right now. Of course, that's not to say that that is the entirety of all that could be considered, but that is the current state.
Why don't you name them?
Golf club, what else?
There's the golf club and there are the 2 lodges.
2 lodges.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, because the other ones I don't think have any
No, it doesn't matter where you live.
It doesn't matter where you live.
Yeah.
They have no
And they
restriction.
have no membership.
Or in terms of lodges, it's not where you live necessarily.
No, it's-
No, it's their policy.
It's what is it again?
I think I'm not
I
sure.
forget,
I don't
what
think
is-
women can join the lodge.
Pardon?
I don't think women can join the
Oh,
lodge.
so it's if you're a man or a woman. Okay,
I
just
think
one
so.
clarification
I
on
don't
that.
know.
Just wanted to know.
Why are we making decisions if we don't think, we don't know? I mean.
Well, I don't know about the lodge. I mean, I guess someone can answer that's in the
I
lodge.
think it's only open to males.
It always was.
My understanding of that. We discussed that when we talked.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a man's
And
club.
we didn't feel so long.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, my comment is, I brought this up, I am in favor of recommending, number 1, to exclude the organizations that don't allow
That have restrictive membership.
restricted membership. I do know that, yes, they do good work But I just feel that for the golf course, I mean, I checked and they do have a waiting list now of 60 people, but people do leave and they are able to accommodate them. That it wouldn't guarantee you a place in the club, but at least you would get on the list. And I feel it should be open to the municipality and not a certain area. So I would be in favor of supporting the first one.
Are you gonna make that a motion, Sharon?
I'll make that a
Can
motion.
we have some, okay, we'll discuss it later.
I'll second that.
I'm totally against what you say. I think, this is clearly targeted at the golf club.
That's how it starts.
Because 2 or 3 people were upset with the business decision to restrict membership. They can still play golf and probably save money by just paying greens fees. You just can't become a member because they have a business decision that they're capping their membership at a certain amount. This is an organization that contributes based on the estimates I've come up with over $25,000 back in kind by allowing a number of Bonnie Lee Farm, Chester Minor Hockey, Pro Kids, providing a service open to all juniors, and providing a service to everybody in the municipality. But because one person complained that they couldn't become a member, they can play golf. We're not restricting on the basis of religion or color or creed or anything. This is simply a business decision
Where you live.
based.
They have to restrict their membership.
That I understand, however,
And I think we're being very petty
oh, okay.
by doing that, given so their next step, if they need to, I don't think they're as petty as we would be, to start charging some of these organizations, but they do provide a service back. They pay back many times over from the services they provide back to us. And I just think it doesn't mean they employ people from all over the municipality. Again, it's not restricted in playing golf. They can still play golf. I mean, we gave $100,000 to a golf club down in Escatog. I mean, why are we picking on this one? 200,000. I mean, now and for $8,000 a year, we want to. And I doubt if we have studied every one of these organizations to see what their membership requirements are. Kim, have you looked at all these organizations, their bylaws, and see what their membership requirements are?
Back before the presentation in June, we worked together with the Community Development Department to review each of the organizations that was included on the bylaw at the time. So yes.
But Andre,
Well, I'll just say that, it's a slope that's slick. Because we have, for example, we have churches that offer services to the community, and we support that because it's a community-wide service that offers, but it's clearly those that are engaged, there are members of that religion. So I think we have to be very careful about withdrawing support for groups that provide good work and provide value. I just don't know if this is the right move.
Tina,
Thank you. I have no hesitation to support the motion. I am sad to think that there are organizations today that restrict based on whether you are a man or a woman. So that's easy. That's an easy one. In terms of my decision making as well, I think it would have just been so much easier if the Chester Golf Club, if that's the official name, would have opened up their membership to anybody, no matter their postal code, civic address, to be able to join. It's all it took, all it took. And I will say that since this has hit council table, it's grown arms and legs, because there are people that reached out and said, I assume you won't be giving any other thought than the fact of what I just said. Their membership is not open to us here in this community, that being you, Ross. Absolutely, I said, I've got your back. So that's all it would have taken. That's all it would have taken. So I'm in full support of the motion. Anyway, you slice it.
Can I ask a question, maybe for you?
Sure.
So if we in Chester determined we had a need, or an organization that had a need for a transition house for women who are fleeing violence, you would not give them a tax exemption bylaw. You would exclude, you would charge them taxes. Because you wouldn't.
Because it's not for men.
Because it's not for men.
I haven't given any thought to
Oh, I
that.
have.
I think that's a slippery slope.
I think it's a slippery slope you're going down. I just think I think it's the wrong message for a couple of dollars. We're not talking millions of dollars here for these.
I don't support it either, and I'm gonna say that because one, the golf course provides so much service to the community. It's a valuable resource. It was donated by people to us who believed that it was a value to the community, and I'm with Derek. They give so much stuff back to the community, provide resources for other community organizations who need to fundraise, and I understand why. I mean, I'd like to see them open their membership. Yes, we've discussed it with them. And the day I think will come when they can, but they have restrictions based on number of users that they can handle. And I think if we're going to do this, the next thing we're going to be doing is looking at our entire grants program and have to apply who's allowed in, what's the service, is it open to everybody of every age? I mean, the Girl Guides are for the girls. The Boy Scouts are for boys. I mean, I just, whatever. Yep.
Yeah, Derek, I don't think, I'm not being petty. And to say that, when they did their presentation, we didn't ask anything out of the way of them. We didn't ask to let anybody join. We asked that anybody could put their name on the list to join. It's ultimately up to them, the executive, based on their membership, who they let in. So that's what I would argue, and that's what makes it restrictive.
Yeah, I didn't mean if I did to call you petty. I think
No,
that's if we make that
but
decision,
when they
right?
made their presentation, and we said, look, we understand that you have 800 people on your list, and you can't accept any members at this point. But if you change your covenant to say, to include the municipality, that anybody within the municipality, and whether you put it in your covenant that you have to be there for 5 years, residents for 5 years, like they do within their covenant now. If they do that, you know that if you put your name on that waiting list, it could be 20 years till you got in. That, I don't think that's an unreasonable ask. I really don't.
But it's a business decision that they made, and we can look at all the organizations under that type of lens. And I know one of the things that we said we were going to do, and I don't know if we've done it. I haven't seen a copy. After our last meeting, we were going to write a letter to the golf club.
We have asked
We did. They
asked
denied
them
it.
to change it.
They denied it.
At this point.
I don't think the motion was asked them to change it. It was asked
To consider.
that we were considering this change.
Yeah, I
And
don't remember.
did that letter go to them?
I don't remember the exact wording.
It wasn't shared with us. Was there a response?
I don't remember.
It wasn't shared. It wasn't shared with us. The letter itself wasn't either. So, but I guess that's normal. I don't know what the protocol is as far as that type of correspondence. Anyway, I understand, Grace, that people have strong views. I have strong views. We differ. I mean, that's why we're around the table.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's a tough one as far as I'm concerned. It's not about the money here for me, and I don't think I'm here to go on this personally today, just for a number of points that were brought up. But as far as the golf course goes, it is restrictive. And I know because I'm a golfer and I tried to join the golf course, and it was based on a restricted area, who could join, who couldn't. I had my name on a list, and they took people from all over the states. People live in Chester 2 or 3 months a year. I'm a full-time resident, wasn't allowed to join. When they expanded the courts, if you had $10,000, you could join. Well, I understood some of those issues and I understood, but the restrictive part, I think it was a condition when the golf course.
Was
property
donated
was
in the first
donated,
place.
that it was restrictive. And it was, they did expand the boundaries, my understanding, but
Yes.
not the Hubbard's area yet, but they
It's
are
added a couple
expanded.
of times.
Well, they are expanded a bit. They always had full membership. They used to have 200 or 300 on a waiting list. Now it's 60. I'm not even sure that could be the number. And before, when they had the waiting list, you were allowed from outside the area. And you were taken, I guess, on this list. 64, yeah. And I'm not even sure how that works now, because I did join Chester Golf Course because I had to move to Chester to get here. And I did that. I moved to Chester for a week and then they took me in as a member. That's how I get to be a member of Chester Golf Course. It may not have been the right way, but I got there because I love golf and I was on a list. And the list wasn't treated very good either. They would take people they knew ahead of other people. That has nothing to do with this. And I'm not upset over it, and it's not the money, but when I hear some of the other things about the gender and Girl Guides and Boy Scouts, and I'm not sure if we've done an in-depth look at all this and how much it may affect other organizations. I'm not sure of that. Like I said, it's not about the $8,000 or $9,000, because I do agree, Chester Golf Course does a lot for the different organizations. The restrictive part, I know, Adele, you probably wanted to join for years, and because of where you live, you're not allowed it. Our tax dollars are going back into the golf course, and there's an argument there. There definitely is an argument.
Of course, that's why we're arguing.
Well, I know, but that's why it's very hard to make a decision,
I agree.
because of all the good things that they do. It's, and then when I look at some of the other points brought up here, I'm not sure we've done enough research to convince me of, when we talked with the law just before, I spoke in favor, I think, it's 2022 and things have changed in the world. And we talk about it every day, we see it every day, being inclusive to males, and females, and genders, and you name it, we talk about it. But I'm not sure I have enough information on all of those things. And I don't want to put it, I don't want to hurt our organizations that we support in our municipality just because we made a quick or snap decision that wasn't researched enough either.
So.
Yes.
Tim, did you mention this was at our last discussion at council table was in June?
Yes.
I think, okay, yeah, no, just wanted a reminder of that. And I know that Councillor Asif and I both have an EDI meeting on Tuesday evening. Just between now and then, I might actually add this to the agenda. The EDI, because again, we're talking inclusivity and going forward. So, yeah, it's tough, but I guess for me, again, since June until now, I would have had time to think about it and have feedback from my community members. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it goes beyond this, that if we go down this road, then we have to look at what's the impact on the ordinary grant process, because if we're gonna apply the same philosophy, then.
Sure.
Then
Yeah, maybe that envelope should be open then, yes.
well, should or shouldn't, it gets complex, that's all I'm saying.
For example, Chester Brass Band, is that restricted?
I don't know.
Yeah, let's
If I
look at
can't
the
play
list.
music, if I can't play music, can I join it? Probably not. So is that restrictive? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know.
Well, it is, am I being
Oh, my.
mistreated or not allowed to join the Chester Brass Band? I can't say I know that.
I mean,
I can't play an instrument.
We just funded, what's that hockey tournament?
Yeah, Paralympic.
Paralytic, well, if you're not paralytic, you're not part of it, right? I just don't know where it ends.
I just had a flashback over the argument of not raising the pride flag 3 years before we actually did it. I had a flashback of that argument that was presented here at the table. Sorry, it's sad.
Well, I'm just.
Sad.
They're not equivalent.
Yeah, oh, no, you weren't here and they weren't recorded, unfortunately, the meeting.
And I think Sam brought up a good point that if we're gonna even go down this road, then there's some wording changes that just because you can't just because it's restrictive, there may be really, really sound good reasons why it's restrictive. And paralegal is a good reason. And, you know, and if it's a house for a women's center, there may be a good reason, but it's just that we're gonna have to get wording that's different than what we have.
You move them from this category likely to the grant category, where they're gonna, like, they're gonna provide Chester minor hockey for pro kids and for Bonnie Lee, they need a grant. So we grant them $8,000. I mean, how much minutia we're going to get into or cover? If they're discriminating on the basis of religion, color, and, you know, things that in the past were, you know, can imagine it. I think this is in the same category. And I think we have to allow some flexibility in policy.
Well, I'm just,
I think everybody.
I just see that if we do this, if we're going to have to review our entire grants policy based on similar criteria.
I'd rather review the policy, and look at it in detail and legal and all that before we change it personally. That's me.
Well, it's a bigger deal.
Well, it is, and some convincing that it's not a big deal, I guess I'll support it. It is a big deal. We have a lot of organizations depend on this, and I don't know if this decision is gonna affect those decisions, I'm not sure.
I have a request, so when we get to the call for the vote, because we do have a mover and a seconder, I would like to record a vote, please.
Absolutely, not a
Thank
problem.
you, thank you.
Any further discussion?
Just want so are we talking the lodges here too, or just?
Yeah. Everything. We're also talking the other ones that we haven't examined yet in detail to see how they make some form of discrimination, even though they're not targeted. You mentioned the first one, it's for the fund, the Chester Brass Band. Great group. Hey,
Why not?
I mean, if I apply, I probably wouldn't get in.
Why?
They don't play a brass instrument.
Well, then why would you apply? I mean, you're gonna go there and play an instrument that you don't know how to play it. That would be your call. You could go there and rehearse and you can't even blow the tuba.
Okay, well, let's go to
So
hockey.
that's
team.
not an argument.
The Chester, what are they called?
Well, there's a girls hockey team. I
And
don't
there's a
know.
boys hockey
Oh,
team.
God. This is
So
EDI.
I'm just saying,
Which I'll put this at EDI.
I don't know.
well, I mean, somehow you're gonna have to, whatever.
Well, did anybody know if so are they, has the Chester Golf Club said we're not gonna explore?
No, they haven't said they're not gonna.
Well, I think to be fair,
They just said last year they weren't changing it.
if,
But in June, we made a motion to write them a letter.
Yeah, so I don't know what-
remember
Did we write, what did we ask?
I know we did, and I
What was
don't
the-
remember what it said, and I don't remember what response we got. Just because I don't remember.
so if we, I don't know if we can write them another letter and say, you know,
Of course you can.
based on discussion around the table, have you reconsidered?
That was the letter we were supposed to write in June.
Have you reconsidered
We've written that letter.
we've written a letter?
That's the letter we wrote.
So, okay, so we didn't receive a response?
Nobody knows.
So
Okay.
in terms of stopping discussion now versus just determining right now, because we're here now.
Yeah.
We're at this table, we can determine very easily if that letter went out.
Yeah.
And if there was response back.
Yeah.
And a non-response would be actually a message as well. So we'll determine if we wrote the letter. And if
I
there
know
was a
we did,
response.
I just don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah, and what, if any, the response back from that organization to our official correspondence might have been. So we can, I'm not sure what you do, if we kind of put this in hot idle for a second, or what you do, but yeah. I'd like to finalize that right now in terms of correspondence.
So we got a motion on the floor.
We have a motion on the floor. So if there's any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's defeated. So I think we need to get the answers to the letter, and we need to give some thought to what it means to our other policies concerning grants.
Just because motion was defeated, in my opinion, it's not good to me.
Oh, no,
I just think we have to look at
It's never dead.
what. I just think we need to look deeper into this, because I think there's more to it than what we think. the possibility of affecting the other organizations.
Yeah.
Lodges, all those.
Right, recorded vote.
Yeah, we have a recording.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you asked for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, I just think that it's gonna have a greater impact, whatever policy decisions we make. And
That's why they call it democracy.
Yes, let's move on. Open discussion.
okay. So now. First reading, clean energy.
I'd like to say something before we start that. I just wanted to share with people an email that I received from a resident who's building a new home in Washington Shore, and he's gone completely solar, and he actually is probably watching. He told me he watches the live feed, and
He's one of our 5 watchers, is he?
well, he was really appreciative of our commitment to the PACE program for clean energy, and he even offered, and I thank him for the offer, before they put the drywall up, if we wanted to tour his house and what the things that these contractors doing there, and he really looks forward, and he actually thanked all council for taking this approach and being ahead a little bit of the game in some other areas. He's not from here, but his wife is from here originally, so from Chester actually. So I just wanted to pass that along, and it's nice to know that people appreciate those things, right?
It's Councilor Vino's suggestion at one of our strategic planning initiatives. So he was the one leading the charge a couple of times to get it placed on our strategic initiatives.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you, Andrew.
so first reading, is somebody prepared to move, we give first reading?
So moved.
Seconder,
Second.
discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. Okay, 8.1, election of deputy wardens.
We're at,
Oh, wait.
yeah, we're at 7.5.
There just was no material subject.
There is no,
No material.
yeah, good morning, council, yeah, so apologize for that there's no material, but basically you saw, this is the follow-up for the conversation that we had last week. So you saw the draft policy at that point, and from that discussion, council had at least 3 points that they wanted further input on in order to provide direction. So those 3 points were some questions around the administration, the program administration fees, amounting to $650, the percentage rate that we would apply for financing, and then the total program allocation that we would apply either annually or in terms of the program overall. One of the decisions council did make was, and that was captured in the bylaw, was the offering financing over a 10-year term. So that obviously will structure to a degree that program allocation that we have, but we'll get to that in detail. And Tim is here because he can bring his expertise, and he would like to sort of just touch on these components in order to provide council with enough context and a framework as to how this would work. The one thing that I will add, I'll just address the administration fees. There was one concern in particular that was regarding whether residents who enter the program are charged those program fees and then decide not to proceed with the energy retrofits, what would happen with those fees? As things currently stand, the resident would be billed. And then we would be, that would be that exchange between the municipality and the resident. Tim has said that one of the things that we could certainly do for that is, again, apply that $650 over that financing term. So then that becomes less of an upfront burden. So that, if that's a concern, that's one way of addressing it. The other was whether, I think there was the idea floated, I believe it was Councillor Vino, as to whether in that instance, if a resident decides not to proceed with energy retrofits, that perhaps the municipality would absorb those program fees, if that's the case. That mechanism we would have to discuss and determine. But certainly clean is not averse to that. It would just be how we as a municipality would offset that cost with clean and basically pay that bill, so to speak. So that's something to consider. So is there any further thoughts on that, or Tim, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I'm happy to provide some additional context. I was following the discussion last week. Unfortunately, I wasn't in a state that I could present anything at the time, but I'm happy to do so now. A few things I wanted to touch on. The first would be kind of how we're framing the finance understanding of this program. Essentially, from a finance perspective, this is not an annual expense. This is an investment, and I mean both in terms of investing in the community, but as well as from just a pure financial perspective. This is just an investment in some respects, right? So we would lend somebody money, they pay us back with some rate of interest. Very similar to if we're leaving that money in a interest-bearing cash account or invested into some instrument like a GIC. So from some of the conversations previously, excuse me, if this program were to, as Jonathan presented last week, to be the maximum of 40,000 per resident, we calculated a rough total overall investment for this program to be about $2.4 million. And I think perhaps it would be helpful to understand, to maybe reframe in the way we think about this as not, or as to be more of an earmarking of funds to invest in a program and to invest in an interest-bearing investment. So perhaps that would help frame the thinking a little bit more, because it's not an annual expense. It is specifically an investment that is returned to us. It could also help with the timing of the program. So rather than limiting the participation to a certain number of households per year, you could set a threshold of how much we're willing to invest in this program, for example, 2.4 million, and then just have the program open. Anybody who's qualified and goes through the process could then draw from it until we hit that cap. And of course, it would likely take quite a few years, if ever, to reach that cap. And if it ever did reach the full amount and there was no, it would there'd be funds freed up over the years as people are paying down their existing loans. So it would kind of consistently roll forward. And if you ever did hit the cap where it's to a point where we couldn't accept any more applicants, perhaps that would be a sign that the program was so popular that it might be time to reassess and perhaps consider investing further into it. So that's one thing. The other one was about the conversation about interest rates. There was some discussion about comparing it to the cost of borrowing. And I think that that's not quite the right perspective to view the interest rates for this program. As it's been mentioned, we cannot borrow for this program. However, the way to look at that, I would say, would be from an opportunity cost perspective. So what would we be earning on this money if we weren't lending it to residents versus what we would be earning if we do lend it to residents. Right now, our cash deposits, which is generally where these funds would sit, earn a rate equal to the Bank of Canada overnight rate plus 0.25%. So that right now is 4% return on cash sitting in the bank. At the same time, so for example, a long-term GIC at the moment is returning at about 5%. The Scotiabank prime rate, which is the same as all the big five banks' prime rate, is right now and generally equal to the Bank of Canada overnight rate plus 2.2%. So that's right now 5.95, which is what was presented to you last week as a suggestion for the discussion. And another example, so right now the Nova Scotia Municipal Finance Corp just finished issuing the fall debentures for 2022, and the 10-year debt average cost is 4.15%. So it's about that same as our cash deposits. Now, for comparison, if a homeowner were to finance this type of work on their own through their own bank, there are a few different options that would be the common ones to choose. A home equity line of credit is something, it's probably the cheapest option if people who have access to that could access it. Currently, the lowest I've seen posted is exactly that 5.95%. An unsecured line of credit runs in the 10 to 12% range right now. And if someone were to finance this type of work on a credit card, that would be a 20 to 30% interest rate they're paying. So that's just to give some context to compare the rates that we're considering versus what someone would have to pay outside of this program. An example of, so the current water supply program uses the Scotiabank prime rate. And I'd like to give an example of how, so you can see that the Scotiabank prime rate is always, or likely always, going to be slightly higher than the rate of return we make on our cash deposits, right? The 5.95 versus about 4%. And so that's how our water supply program is set up. So at any point in time, we're charging a higher rate than what we would be returning if we left that money sitting in the bank. However, for a great example, right now, the average return we're making on existing water supply loans is less than 3%, while we're earning 4% on money that's sitting in the bank. So in a way, we are losing somewhat on the money that we've lent out through that program. But the point of fixing that rate, when we set up a loan, we give a homeowner a specific rate at the time they agree to it, and we do not change it throughout the term, means that we as a municipality are accepting the risk of those fluctuations of market rates. And so generally in general, in the finance world, there's a premium to risk, right? So by accepting that risk, we are in practice technically charging a little bit more than what it costs us to lend the money at a point in time, but that's reflected in us accepting the fluctuations. And so, for example, with the water supply program, we're currently earning less on those loans than we would be if we hadn't made them. So yeah, I think that was all the points I wanted to get to, unless there were some other interest rates comments that you wanted my input on right now.
Very thorough in your explanation of all that.
So council, what we need right now is your direction on these matters. And then once you provide that direction, I can then finalize that policy and bring that policy back to council for that reading.
I don't know if I missed or not. The fees were $6.50, and if someone qualifies, they pay the fee. But if they don't qualify, who pays the fee?
That what was suggested that perhaps we absorb it. But I think the condition on that was if they don't qualify and the documentation says that they don't qualify. We
would absorb the fee. Is that what we're saying?
We're thinking about it. Let's put it
I
that way.
think we want to encourage people to
Put
participate.
in for it, yes.
And if you're a person with reduced means, $650 is a barrier, and you're not sure how this evaluation is going to go. It's a risk, and you want to encourage those people to try. And if in many cases, probably it will work out, and then it would just get rolled into their loan and it wouldn't be a problem because it would all be, the financials would work. And if for some reason it didn't work, you just want to lift that risk off of it.
Yeah, if it came back and said, your house is in such bad shape, none of this works. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that just.
I just have one thing to add. So one of the things we have to look at is that this is a program being administered by a third party, and they're going to bill us for that $650 one way or another. And so we also are working within the MGA guidelines, which say that we cannot give grants to individuals. So a grant to an individual property owner would be akin, paying that $650 outright would be akin to paying a grant to an individual. But we are looking at options that would allow us to structure an arrangement with, and I think that's what Jonathan was alluding to. We're looking at options that we could give that grant to a nonprofit such as, or to an organization such as Clean, and they could administer a program for us that would allow us to do it that way. So those are when Jonathan said we're looking at mechanisms to structure
What do you
that's
mean
what
if
we're
we gave
looking
it
at.
Clean and they could give it back?
So if we give a grant to Clean to administer a program for us, and they could reduce the rate or absorb that in there, then they could administer that and do that.
Yes, to me, that's all that has to happen.
That's what we're looking
They
at.
basically, from now on, they do it for free to all residents, but if they go into the program, then there's an administration charge of $650.
So what it
Yeah.
might be is that if we anticipate that there might be 20 applications a year And we take that, the 650 times 20, we give them a grant for that
And then when
amount.
we build
They do
people,
up
we
to
would get-
20 a year. If they do 5, they still get the same amount that we gave them the grant. If they do 20 and they reach that maximum, then they would come back to us and say, we've reached our maximum, and we go from there. So that's how we're looking at
So why don't we
structuring it.
try that and stick with 5.9%? Which is way cheaper than if they have to go to the bank and get it themselves, and they
Yeah,
don't
that was
need
my
a credit
question.
check.
What are we gonna settle on for an interest rate? What do you recommend, Tim, for an interest rate?
5.9.
5.9?
So I do like the way that the current water supply program works with using the Scotia Bank, because that, acknowledges that we are accepting some risk by providing these loans. That said, this is an interest-bearing program regardless of what rate you set, unless of course you set it at 0. So even if you wanted to set it low at a fixed 1 or 2%, that's still earmarking a certain portion of our reserves to be invested at that slightly lower return than what we may get in the market. So it would still be a net gain for the organization, even if we do set it lower. That said, I do like the way the water supply program works now. I think that's a good process.
At 5.9.
Yep.
Well, it's based on the current rate plus.
Right. It would be the current bank prime rate, which is today 5.95%.
And that the way it works for the water supply upgrade program is that rate is fixed at the time the agreement is signed with the resident. So then over the course of their financing term, that would be the same rate. Is that correct, Tim?
Yes, that is correct.
And people who, and we're gonna, and from what I can get, and we're gonna go down the road of those people who find out that their house just isn't worth it, we're not gonna charge them the 650. So that's gonna help most of the poorer people in the world,
And I think,
which is what we're trying.
and it's the right thing to do. If we have to take a little financial hit on it, that's what we do. We do stuff all the time that helps, what doesn't have a financial gain, right? And I think this is important.
I think when it comes going back to the sorry to bounce around a little bit here, but just going back to the PACE program fees, one of the things to consider is that if we're going to sort of just have it open, and we might, if we get 20 or we get 10, then that becomes again, it's part of the mechanism that we would have to discuss, but how we'd have to ensure that we can anticipate what that is, whether that's direct billing from Clean for the number of files received, or whether it's a grant or whatever term that we award upfront. So that's part of the mechanism that Tara and I would started to discuss. In terms to provide a little bit of context, our neighbors Modal, when they recently launched their PACE program, they limited it to a cap of 10 qualifying properties per year. They maxed that out, and they in fact have 30 properties on a waiting list. So there was a considerable uptake. So I think that speaks to both what Tim and Councillor Vino have said in terms of that, it would behoove us to sort of really ensure that we have mechanisms in place that can accommodate that interest if it's there.
Yeah.
And if modal is an example, then that would suggest it would.
Oh, I don't have any issues with making, especially in the first year or two. That's when you're going to get the most out of it.
Okay.
That's a good question I have.
Yeah, one question.
A question, Jonathan, wondering, one of the things that you had raised with council when you first presented it was that the administration fee for a number of municipalities was $250 rather than $650. I think the reason for that is the Clean had access to federal funding, and the federal funding reduced that administration fee by $400.
That's correct.
Would that be an option for council rather than exempting to
Just
subsidize for everybody the administration fee? So in other words, you're providing a grant to Clean Nova Scotia, and that grant allows them to reduce the administration fee for all. Is that an option?
That is an option, yes. And I've talked with Clean about that. And one of the things that they identified is that in the breakdown with residents is then that portion that would be subsidized by the municipality would be identified, and then the remaining 250 would be for the resident to pay as part of the overall financing, or obviously if they opt not to participate in the program, they'd be left on the hook for that unless we waive that, absorb that fee for, again, because coming back to the point that Councillor Vino has raised is if somebody opts not to sort of do the energy retrofits. But yes, just to say it more succinctly, yes, Dan, that is certainly an option.
Thank you. But we still have to waive that, whatever.
I see no change. If we can get a grant from the federal government or whatever, then we just apply it and we absorb less.
Well, yeah.
So no matter what, I think that what we should be doing is trying to make this as accessible as we can to as many as we can. And removing the barrier by taking the risk off the resident, because they don't know the outcome of their assessment before
No,
they
if
start.
it says that they can't proceed, then, but I just want evidence that it says that. That's all.
So Tim, could you roll that $250 or whatever that figures into the contract some way? Of the paybacks? You could, I mean.
Yeah,
But that is part of the agreement?
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I missed that, sorry.
Yeah, if they proceed, then it goes in and they pay the loan. It's
Yeah,
only,
and that's included in
it's only
the.
taking the risk
Part
out
of
of
it.
those.
Yeah,
That's
oh,
what
okay, yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Those few people that can't,
Yeah.
that qualify, but choose, or no, sorry, that can't do the program. Yeah.
So from what I can gather, because nobody else is speaking, but we want to find a mechanism that works for us, that we can absorb that $650 fee if there's evidence that they cannot proceed based on the report.
Right. Not that they choose. So
No,
if they
because if
chose
you-
not
because
to.
if
we're
you've got
still
$1 million
okay with
and
the
you
fee
just
being
choose not to
charged.
spend it, then I'm not
Yeah.
absorbing
Yes.
$650.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just,
Okay.
but if the report says it's not worth it, then that's a different story.
So on that count, then I will look at some language and I'll confer with Clean and see if we can come up with some language and a mechanism that would enable us to do that, specifically for absorbing the entire fee amount for residents who find that they cannot proceed, even if they qualify for that work. Okay, so that's one. All right.
Yeah.
And so the other was in terms of we just had some discussion around the subsidy of all fees. Is that something council wishes to pursue?
No, I think we move beyond that. We're only concerned with those people that can't proceed.
Okay, so then that's fair enough. So then on the matter then of financing, the percentage rate of financing.
We want to go 5.9 or 4.
Crime rate, isn't it?
Right, yeah.
Well, whatever.
Bank of Canada plus 0.25.
Well,
that would be 6.25% right now if we went with Bank of Canada plus 2.5.
Bank of Canada 3.75.
The bank prime rates are 2.2 above the Bank of Canada overnight rate.
Well, that's what I meant. I meant the.
but using your formula, Tim, it's 5.95 right this second.
Yes, that is the current Scotiabank prime rate, which is 2.2% higher than the Bank of Canada overnight rate.
I was kind of hoping just to put it at what we would earn if we were investing that same money.
But right now is 4%.
It's 4%.
Well, yeah, so that is the Bank of Canada overnight plus 0.25%. So that's currently 4%.
We want to use that formula, Bank of Canada overnight plus whatever point, whatever.
No, I think we should use prime rate.
Yeah, Scotiabank prime, right? that-
Plus whatever it is,
That's
and
what-
that's 5.95 right this second.
Yeah.
Which is cheaper, you can go get it in.
Yeah, I think that's what.
Okay, so we need to give these people some direction. Is that what we're gonna do?
That's what I,
All right, fine.
Okay.
So the direction is to adopt the same approach as we have with the water supply upgrade program,
Yeah,
Scotiabank Prime. Okay, all right.
yeah.
And then
figure out a way to absorb the $650 that works for us if they can't move forward.
Okay, so then the final point then is the total program allocation. So Tim was just talking about, 2.4 million over that sort of over a 10-year span for residents. What are people thinking? Tim, do you want to chime in and add more on that?
So that 2.4 million was calculated based on the initial idea of 10 per year at a maximum of 40,000 at a rate of 5.95 would mean a total investment on full participation over 10 years and then carrying forward of about 2.4 million. So that's where that number came from. I like the idea of having it just be an allocation of money and not restricting it by the number per year and just kind of roll it forward. Makes it a little simpler, and it is, like I said, an investment. So it's earmarking a certain amount of money to invest at a certain rate. Now, council could set that number higher or lower. I think 2.4 is probably a good starting point. If the program is exceptionally popular and you burn through that in 3 years, it might be an indication to revisit the investment. However, if you want to set it lower, then you would just be setting that threshold for revisiting at a lower point.
And again, additional context, a number of other municipalities in the clean energy financing program have set levels. They burn through that and then have allocated more resources and to support waiting lists. So there is that flexibility if council chooses to go that way.
So do we want to set it at 2.4 over the next 10 years, but we don't restrict the number in any given year?
I think annually we want to have it around, 2.4 divided by 10 or whatever it works out to be. 240,000 per year as a max. So we don't want to do a big, let's say there was a big gob that came at the beginning and then we want to still be able to offer the program.
No, we just need to give direction.
So I think, capping it at 240,000.
240 minutes, 2.4
per
million.
year.
Oh, 240,000 per year.
Yeah, it makes more sense. And then, if somebody comes.
We're going to revisit it anyway every year, depending on uptake.
So 240,000 per year would be a significant reduction over the initial 10 properties at 40,000 each.
That's
right, because as time goes on, there are payments being made. So the 2.4 million
I see what you're saying.
would
Okay.
cover 100 people over 10 years. 240,000 would only be enough for 6 people to participate at full cost. Which is why I was suggesting setting an investment maximum for this program and then just rolling it until until you hit that limit.
All right, let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 2.4 million.
Yeah.
Okay, bring all that back to us. That's what we're doing anyway.
So I just got a question. So Tim, so if we allocate 2.4 million to this program, so I guess in layman's terms, so we're gonna take that 2.4 million and set it in a pot over here.
Which we won't be able to use for anything else.
The whole 2.4 million. So we can't allocate. We have to set that aside.
Can't use that.
That's our money. It's not our money. So
It's essentially, it's very similar to setting aside some money in a long-term investment of some other sort, right? You're setting it aside, you're earmarking it as to be used in this program. Now, of course, any amount of that money that hasn't been used yet will still be sitting in our cash account, earning us interest at whatever rate we're earning in our cash account.
That's what I was at. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah, we can change our minds
Yeah,
any day.
perfect.
Exactly. And that's the other thing too, is when it comes to the contracts with Clean, the council always has that ability to adjust these parameters. Yeah. All right. So thank you for this direction. I will then incorporate this into the next version of the PACE program policy. And I'll just run that by Tim, make sure we've got our math correct, and then I will bring that to council as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to do 8.1 and then we're having a break. So unless I'm missing something, I am now on the election of deputy board for the second council term. As per policy 5.9 of policy P109.
I got some questions.
Yeah.
You want to have a break before I start?
No, very good. I want to earn him a break.
These are more governance issues, and I reviewed the policy. I wasn't here when this was set up. You may recall from the discussion on mayor versus warden,
Yeah,
that I have some strong views on structure.
yeah.
And so none of these comments, as they weren't then, are personal. They're just things that I want clarification on.
Yeah. I just want to say that this policy is only before you because it is our current policy and it's the policy under which we have to proceed with the election.
And I fully understand that.
Yeah, it's
fully
not here to
understand.
be changed.
I understand that. I know to change it.
That's a whole different
Whole
thing.
different thing. But I had some questions because I went back to the minutes when this was adopted, trying to determine the reason. I'm sure you've all done that before the meeting, look at the minutes from 6 years ago.
No, I did not.
Just why was it changed from a 4-year to a 2-year?
Somebody wanted it. That's all it was.
But there was a reason presumably, and some of the reasons given at the time were having a lesser term will provide the opportunity for knowledge of someone who may want to build up experience to pursue the office of warden at some time. I'm concerned with generational change here, guys. You know, you've been here a long time and have done a wonderful job as Mr. Shacker has done. But time is coming very shortly when some of you guys won't be around the table. We don't have anyone with any type of experience doing the job you've done. I don't think that's healthy. So that was one of the reasons given 6 years ago for making this change. I think the intent seemed to have been from the tenor of the minutes is that it would be 2 years, and then at the end of 2 years, it wouldn't just be an automatic renewal. It would be a view of maybe giving someone else an opportunity. Because it said other reasons given, strengthening of council and opportunity for others to step up. There's also consideration at that time for instead of having 2-year terms, that would have 4 1-year terms. And I think some municipal units actually change the deputy warden every year, you know, for that reason. Yeah. So I think in the deputy warden is seeing someone as a training ground to give others a chance to learn and grow. I think that's healthy. I'm looking at having a discussion and maybe a policy change moving forward. I'm not proposing, I know Mr. Shafer is looking to renew the term, and I'll support him in that. And I think, you know, I have a lot of respect for the deputy warden, and he knows that. But I think going forward, I think we need to look at this deputy warden's position a little differently. And look at it as perhaps some type of a training ground to give other people younger than you and I, Mr. Shafer, an opportunity to get the experience. Because at some point, and I don't know, if it's 2 years from now or 6 years from now or 10 years from now, we're going to need, and we may by then go to the mayor system, I don't know. This is a moving target. But I just think we need to look at the future and look at a policy. Why, if we change it to 2 years, we wouldn't have changed it if we didn't think we were going to do it differently, in my view. And I would like to consider looking at 1-year terms for deputy and the change with a rotation every year. You know, it's tough to mandate that. And I don't know if that's the right way to go, but that's, I honestly feel that in a perfect world, the deputy warden would be rotating. And I just want to put that in. And I don't know if I need to put a motion to consider a policy change or what.
Just
the thoughts
adding
around
more stuff to
I
the
know what the
list.
thoughts around the table are, right? I haven't canvassed. I'm just assuming, Deputy Warden Shafer, based on discussion that you are looking to go against. So I'm reluctant almost to raise this, because I don't want you to think this is a personal thing.
I doubt that, and I'm not going to discuss it right now, but we're moving forward. If this does come up, I certainly will voice my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, right now, I mean, I don't want to get too far out of line, but that's new business. That's not on the agenda.
No, I could ask to be added to another agenda.
Yeah, and I think
Absolutely.
that's the issue. I mean, we're at the point right now where we're using
But
the existing policy to do it.
but what I was mainly asking is, what was the reason for the change in the policy 6 years ago?
And you read the minutes, and I guess
Yeah.
you're right here.
And I think, I don't think we lose sight of what we were.
No,
I wasn't here at the time, you were here, right?
yeah.
I think most of you were.
And
Very few
and the
changes
new
around this
agenda
table.
item is perfectly fine. I just, that right now, today, we're at the place where the election takes place based on the current policy that exists.
But if the intention was, and why it's relevant to the motion, the intention was 6 years ago when you adopted this, that it would be changing every 2 years based on the minutes. And
It just allows for it, doesn't say it's supposed to.
No, it allows, but you do that for a reason. You just don't do it. For the- So I think in that context, I just wanted to find out if there was anything I'm missing on the reasons for it at the time before we actually go.
I don't think you're missing it. We're not voting. We're gonna have a call for nominations and move forward.
And a vote if there's two people named for vote. So.
So just to chime in, I guess, because I certainly would have been here 6 years ago. And
I
I
was
did
hoping
go,
you would.
okay, sorry, yeah, but no, I should have probably gone back and looked at minutes again, but I'll just go by memory and recollection. And my thoughts only, because I was only one person of the 7 who were here, whoever the 7 were at the time. And I agree with with your points, absolutely, 100%, 100%. Because for me, at that time, and still today, would be simply the health of the organization, nothing else. Smart succession planning and health of an organization. Added to that, I would have looked to the reasoning and why others might be as well, because that's how I learn. I don't think that I know everything when I come in here, and hopefully when I leave, I'm still learning. And so I look to fellow municipal units as to why they would have arrived at what they do and how they practice their governance and good governance at the table of their elected officials. So that's where I would have been 6 years ago. And I'm glad you brought this up. I really actually, because I hadn't given it that deep of a dive at this time, but I'm glad you reminded me of why I was passionate about it 6 years ago, and I still am. So if it's not discussed today, as in the way that we, or maybe some would like to have it discussed, then maybe we will add it to either a committee the whole next week or council the following week, but hopefully not too far down the road. Because I'm sure there's some stipulations around timelines in terms of changing things. So
Oh, yeah.
we want to make sure we're ahead of that
I just don't want to get too far down the road on business that's not
on the agenda.
on the agenda.
Sure, but I think this is on the agenda because it leads to how we proceed from here. What was the intention then? Anyway, I think it's relevant. I think it's in order.
And adding it to the agenda is not an issue. It's just that I have to deal with it based on the policy that's in front of us.
I agree.
Okay, so election of deputy warden for second half council term. I guess I would call for nominations.
I'll nominate Floyd Chapper.
Second motion.
Moved and seconded Floyd Chapper to be nominated, or do you accept?
Yes.
Are there any other nominations for deputy warden? Are there any other nominations for deputy warden? I think that is the third and final time. So I declare you elected.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay, we're taking a 10-minute break.